Welcome back, everybody. Got another video. This is going to be a short one. Nothing intended or meant for legal purposes. All history, knowledge, opinion. This one is going to be on outcrossing and inbreeding. It's a pretty simple concept. Most anybody can understand it, but I'll cover some other things that go with it. So anytime I made outcrosses, or at least most of the time when I made outcrosses, not every time, but most of the time I made outcrosses, I wanted to, and I'm talking about a 50-50 outcross, or even any kind of, or a dog that is a 50-50 outcross, but has one of the sides of the cross is similar to what I already have, which would be like a 75-25% cross. Meaning that the dog I'm bringing in, like Champion Ninja, Jeep Rascal dog. He was a Jeep Rascal dog. I had Jeep dogs, so that's kind of that quarter cross. But if you're talking strictly 50-50, that's what an outcross is. Then what I like to do in either case was use dogs that had similar traits. Now there's another method which makes sense too, where you bring something in that's different, a crossing that's different from your blood, but it has traits that your blood is lacking, or your blood has lost, or something different that you might want to add, which will enhance that. I'll give an example of that. My buddy used a Skull Red Boy Jocko dog. And my buddy's dogs are known for being rough. Dog he brought in was rough, but he was smart too. He would fight the head, muzzle like that, and go to the stifles. So that head part, even though some of his blood did a little bit of that, most of them didn't. He brought that in. The roughness matches the roughness of his blood, and you add that little bit of smarts. The results of that breeding, you had dogs that were mostly rough, like both sides have, and then some will come out, they were rough, but they were smart too. That was adding something that wasn't really in there. But most of the time when I did it, and that's smart to do that, but most of the time when I did it, I wanted like traits, similar, because you have more chance of capturing them if both sides have it, even if they're outcrossed. So what you do when you make that outcross, because of hybrid vigor and athleticism and performance and all that, you get like traits, but they're enhanced, a little bit better than what you had, which is what an outcross is supposed to do. It's supposed to improve athleticism, performance, and bring in some hybrid vigor. Hybrid vigor, of course, comes from the outcross, but vigor itself should always be in your dogs. That's the only difference. Hybrid vigor comes from an outcross, but vigor itself should be in your dogs at all times. That should never be lost. So using that 50-50 cross, when you bring it in, you can basically take the pups from that, take the males from that. The inbreeding part would be breed it back to the mother. Or take the females from that, breed it back to the father. In the one part, you're enhancing the traits of the mother by inbreeding them. You're capturing more of those traits, or making the gene pool smaller on her side. And if you do it with the father-daughter, you're capturing the traits of that father, enhancing those or retaining them more. You can also make a brother-sister breeding, which the best result, in my opinion, is you capture the traits of both the sire and the dam through the brother and sister. Now you could also capture, some could be take more out of the after the father's side, Some could take more after the mother's side, or all of them could take after one side or the other, or all of them could take after both, or you just have to go through it and see what the results are. That's the purest form of inbreeding after an outcross. So when you do that, once you've done that, made that outcross, made your inbreedings, you can line breed it, inbreed it more, or you can add another cross, because all three examples are inbred dogs, and if you want to put something else in and bring another cross in, you can do that. So if you want to inbreed more, you can inbreed more. Kind of like what they did with Red Boy. 3 times father-daughter, like Champion Yellow John. Or you can inbreed on the mother's side. Or, like I said, you can bring another cross in. Or you can inbreed the brother and sister more, right? Inbreed brother and sister, take a brother, sister, that, like that. I have some of these examples in my new book coming out about breeding. We're creating a pure line, or creating a pure line from an outcross on one side to the other, which basically you would breed, if you're breeding father to daughter, you're gonna after that outcross, you're gonna inbreed it more on the father and daughter side, more on the father and daughter side, and it's and you do the same with the mother son, inbreed it more, and that's just taking after one side. But when you create a pure bloodline, by the time you get done with it, you have both sides covered, and that's what makes your pure line. And it's a little more detailed, but like I said, I'll have it in the book for people to follow. They can try it if they want. I've never done it. I know a couple of people that have throughout all the time I've been in the dogs and game fowl. It actually came from a game fowl guy. I've only known of 1 or 2 people to do it, so I don't know how effective it is. But that's the method of creating a pure line, a pure bloodline, or creating purity on one side or the other after making an outcross. So it's an effective method of making an outcross and inbreeding after that. If you're going to line breed, when you make that outcross, then you make that inbreeding, you can bring a relative of the sire to those resultant pups, or a relative of the dam from those resultant pups, say the sire's brother, the sire's uncle, the sire's grandfather, and breed it to those inbred pups. You would do the same with the mother's sister, the mother's aunt, the mother's grandmother, or you could bring a cousin of the mother, a cousin of the father, and even a cousin of the resultant pups, meaning it would be a dog sired by a dog that is the brother to the sire bred to a different bitch, something totally different. So the commonality would be the pup is right off the sire, and then you're going to take that pup and breed her to a male that's off the sire's brother and a different female. And you could do the same thing with the female side. You take a male off of that or a female off of that, breed it to the something that's off of the mother's brother or sister. And the same thing with the other side. You could breed the brother or the sister of the original sire. So what would help too is if you were to write this down on paper, a fake pedigree, or not fake. That's a word that doesn't bode well in the community, but a mock-up pedigree, right? And just see what your options are for making particular breedings. And I did that all the time, just to see how it looks, and as it pertains to what's available. The relatives, certain relatives might not be available. The brother or sister to the original sire and dam may be available, but their parents might not, or their grandparents might not, or uncle might not. Which, that's another reason to breed enough dogs, enough reason to network with other people, make friends, so that you have more options, right? And if it's something that you want and something that the person you're dealing with wants, you can make that trade. If the trade isn't available, you just go and pay for it. Pay for a stud fee. Pay for a couple of pups out of a litter. And, one thing a friend of mine used to do too is when he'd buy pups from someone, if you bought a grown dog, for example, he would buy one dog. This dog's tested, or this dog's of age to start schooling, or whatever it is, he'd buy one. But if he was going to buy a pup from a breeder, he would buy 2 or 3 or 4 out of the same litter, which increased his odds of having a good pup out of those 2 or 3 or 4. Your odds are, if you have 2, odds are 50-50 or 0-0. They don't work out. If you have 3, you have a 1 in 3 chance, or 2 in 3 chance, or 3 in 3 chance that they're going to work out. If 2 of them don't and you have 1, it's a pretty good investment. If you get 4 of them, now your odds are 4 to 1 that you might get something. And you might get 2, if you're damn lucky, you might get 4. But even if you get 1, if that individual out of 4, that individual is important to you, was it worth the cost of buying all 4? That's something you have to think about yourself, because we invest. I did in the past, and a lot of other people did, almost everybody did, and even today would be the same. You invest a lot of money in these dogs with no guarantees. So if it's worth it to you to buy 3 or 4 pups, do it out of the same litter, something you really like, because it'll at least up your odds that you're probably going to get something. Unless it's just junk or the breeding didn't work. If the breeding didn't work, nobody got nothing, not even the breeder. If it's junk, you're increasing your odds of getting more junk. But if they're good, solid dogs with a good record, come from producers and performers and all that stuff, odds are you're going to get something out of it. Because as a breeder goes along with those standards of having performers and producers and all, especially producers, dogs that can produce, almost every litter that breeder has, he's going to get something out of it. And that's the point I got to, and I've mentioned that before. Whether it's 1 dog or whether it's 6 dogs out of the litter, I'm going to get something that I can use. Something in competition or breeding, or something in breeding that I can use. Which that only meant that I held the dog back, or I wanted to use it just for breeding, even though it was good enough to be a competitor. So that happens, but you're going to get something. Maybe a dog that came out of a particular litter. The litter wasn't very successful, but I got 1 or 2 out of them, and I could compete with them and win with them. But they didn't meet the standards for my breeding. So I wouldn't use them in my breeding program, but at least I got to play with them a little bit in competition. So that's the effect of breeding, making an outcross, and then inbreeding after you make that outcross. It's very effective. It's been done a bunch of times. There's all different kinds of ways you can go with it. And like I said, it's a short vid. I'll have more coming up. Thanks for your support, and I hope you enjoy it. Post comments, questions, all that stuff. Thank you.